When you're stressed, when your body is in fight or flight and you're really jacked up on stress hormones, your body is designed to shut blood off from the inner portion of your abdominal organs, your digestive organs, your intestines, right? Your liver, your spleen, like all of these things that we require for digestion. Hi everybody, Christian Nix here. I get questions about constipation. Mostly, this does have an impact on reflux, it does, but also people with all kinds of problems with elimination and problems in the lower bowels especially are generally also dealing with other problems like Crohn's disease, IBS, colitis, diverticulitis, etc., etc. But this does have a bearing on the other end of your digestive system, i.e. acid reflux. And so that's a good place to begin, right? If you're dealing with problems with elimination, and I'll get into the two different types of constipation in just a second, because you need to understand the mechanism behind each one of them. But if you're dealing with any problem at any point along your digestive tract, you will have problems in another part of your digestive tract if you don't already. In other words, if you start out with acid reflux, you can end up with IBS. If you have problems like constipation, you can very easily have a hard time, and a very hard time, in fact, getting rid of something like acid reflux. The digestive system is one unit made up of all kinds of different, shall we say, moving parts. So that you need to understand and appreciate every stage along your digestive tract, what organs are contributing to what specific problems that you may be dealing with. So let's talk about the two different mechanisms that give rise to the two dominant types of constipation, because this is important to understand. Not all constipation is the same. You can have slow elimination, and I'll explain sort of how to get slow digestion, slow elimination. You could also just have dry intestines causing dry bound stools. It's easy to tell the difference. If you have slow digestion, sluggish elimination, you probably will also have dampness. It's very, very common. If you have a lot of dampness in your intestines, especially in the lower bowel, you'll see mucus in your stools, quite honestly. And so that's one of the very easy ways to tell. But sluggish elimination means typically you won't move your bowels every day, but when you do go to the toilet, when you do have a good bowel movement, it will be either well formed or it will show signs of dampness, meaning that it's loose, it's light colored, it'll be very slimy, like really nasty, foul, slimy stools, really foul smelling kind of stools and bowel movements. That's dampness, right? That's dampness building up in your system. The sluggishness can be caused by mucus building up in your colon, can be caused by all kinds of inflammatory and mucoid colon problems, even in the small intestine. It can be sluggish because there's a lot of mucus building up in your inflamed, usually very irritated intestines. That's what colitis is. That's what Crohn's disease is. Crohn's disease specifically, it means that it's taking place in the small intestine. IBS is a kind of blanket term for a lot of this stuff, but it also usually indicates something going on in your large intestine, typically. But it also, the sluggishness of your elimination, the sluggishness of your digestion overall, the word is motility, and motility means, how fast things move through your intestines. You have what's called a peristaltic wave, and every 12 seconds on average, this wave of muscular contraction works its way down your intestinal lining. So the intestines are very thin, The wall of your intestines is very, very thin. It's like a water balloon, if you picture it this way. And there's enough smooth muscle tissue in the intestinal wall, in the intestinal lining, that it sends this muscular wave, like a contraction, that tries to move food and waste down to the other end and then out the bottom as waste. This wave is affected by, and I go into this in real detail in the pivot protocol. This wave, this peristaltic movement, is affected by stress. When you're stressed, when your body is in fight or flight and you're really jacked up on stress hormones, your body is designed to shut blood off from the inner portion of your abdominal organs, your digestive organs, your intestines, your liver, your spleen, like all of these things that we require for digestion, and to push blood into your muscles. Your heart has to get a lot of nourishing blood so it can keep pumping really hard. That's what stress requires, and your brain. So the fight or flight mechanism, and I talk about this, I have a whole lecture dedicated so that you understand exactly what this is doing. Does it mean that you have to be in a life and death situation, fighting or running for your life? No. When your alarm goes off in the morning, your body dumps stress hormones into your system. It constricts your blood vessels, it raises your heart rate, and it puts blood into your muscles so you can get up and move and get going. So the stress response is active every single day, There's good stress and there's also less good stress. The less good, the bad stress, is where you're thinking, worrying, especially psychological preoccupation that jacks your system up. I mean, if you imagine that you're in a house on fire trying to get out and like running for your life, you can raise your heart rate. You can have the same effect as if that was actually happening. That's not news to anybody, right? If your boss is a real SOB, or you got a coworker who's a real problem, or your marriage is on the rocks, or you can't make the mortgage payment or whatever else, you're dumping stress hormones into your bloodstream all day long. Now, when you try to digest, when you eat and try to digest in those conditions, it slows down the movement of food and fluids through your intestines. And so it's very easy to get sluggish digestion. If for any other reason you have dampness, right, it can slow down the movement of food and fluids through your digestive tract. And this is a type of constipation, although it is not typically what we mean in a medical sense when we talk about constipation, but it does result in slow elimination. So maybe you don't move your bowels every day, or you go to the toilet every 48 hours, right? Which is not normal, which is not good. You need to eliminate on a regular 24-hour basis. At least one bowel movement every 24 hours is kind of minimum, right? To make sure that you're not also, when waste stays inside you and you have sluggish digestion, you're making more dampness, because it's very irritating to your body not to eliminate all that bacteria. I mean, your stool is about 80 to 90% bacteria. So you need to get that out, because it keeps your immune system sort of running normally. When a bunch of bacteria and waste stay in your intestines, you can end up getting inflammatory bowel disease and leaky gut, where bacteria starts getting in through your intestinal wall into your bloodstream, which causes systemic kind of markers of infection, and your body thinks that it has a systemic illness, a systemic infection, and in fact you do, right? Because bacteria is getting in through your intestinal wall, and this is how you end up with autoimmune disease. So it's very important to normalize elimination. The second kind of constipation, which is very easy to recognize, is dry intestines, real dryness. So if you have dry intestines, right, your stools come out in little balls, and maybe even it's very hard to eliminate, but when you do move your bowels, you have dry bound stools in little balls. That kind of constipation is, of course, purely from dryness. Dry intestines are always related to heat in the liver. I talk about this multiple places in the Pivot Protocol. The more heat you have building up in your abdomen, in your internal organs, the more dryness you're going to have to deal with, right? Because heat creates dryness, but also we all dry out as we age. So it's part of the drying out process. Is just the longer you've been alive, the less good fluids, the less good mucus, the healthy mucus that lines your intestines and allows food and waste to move through your intestines smoothly, the less of that good mucus that you have, okay? So it's very common. It's very, very common to end up with dry bound stools. And if you have dry bound stools, that's always a sign that your liver heat is really running, it's on the rampage, right? Your liver is burning out of control, and usually it's been going on for some time. Okay, the good news is treating dryness in your intestines is so easy and so simple, you can really knock it out in about an hour. I give you about 3 or 4 different ways to do that inside the Pivot Protocol, but it's very important to understand the differences between the two types of constipation, because if you treat dry intestines the same way as you treat damp intestines, you will make dampness worse. And if you treat dampness as if you have dryness, you'll make dryness worse. So you must know the difference between these two, and then the solutions actually become the easy part. Okay, so if you haven't started on the Pivot Protocol and you're dealing with anything from acid reflux to IBS to right on down to even common constipation, any digestive symptoms, what you're going to find in the Pivot Protocol is a step-by-step A to Z method for you to target your own symptoms and then eat according to your specific imbalances. The best diet in the world is the one that's best for you at the time that you have specific symptoms, and then you change your diet when your symptoms begin to shift. There's no such thing as a diet. That's why all diets that you've ever heard of are fad diets, because they're all designed, it's like the assumption is, okay, well then one diet is good for everybody. It's like, no. You want a diet that is specific to your condition, your situation. If you're dealing with a chronic digestive disturbance, or some kind of disorder where your digestion is off the rails, well, you have to treat that according to the specific symptoms, because those symptoms are created by specific organ imbalances. And if you understand that point, and you can design foods and food combinations, and it's not hard to do, this is very easy, it's actually very simple once somebody shows you how to do it, then you can eat according to your imbalances, and your organs will work together again, and your acid reflux or IBS or your other digestive disorder will go away on its own. That's the way you cure chronic digestive illness, and you actually, there is no other permanent cure for something like reflux other than to learn how to eat according to your specific condition. Anything else is a Band-Aid, as I like to say, a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. If you have a chronic digestive disorder, You don't want to be doing short-term things like taking acid blockers and whatnot, because obviously even in the medium to long term, and certainly in the long term, you're making that condition much, much worse. So if you're taking supplements, what are you going to do? Take them the rest of your life? The way you heal a chronic digestive disorder is to get your organs working again, and your organs will fix your symptoms on their own. Your body knows how to heal this stuff on its own. Your job is to treat your organ imbalance, okay? So luckily, treating both types of constipation is not difficult to do, but it takes a little bit of understanding, and you have to go about this in a very strategic way, right? You don't want to do anything anybody says about constipation. You need to understand your specific situation and then act accordingly. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you haven't started on the Pivot Protocol, click below.